Okay, just to reiterate, what we're going to try and do is put some more paint down here to cover up these glue marks, all these glue lines. We're then going to mark in the brown for the wood, and I'll probably revisit some of this lightness here with the undercoat that hasn't really covered correctly, and I will revisit all of the sections. I've actually, and I probably knew this was going to happen, I actually ran out of blue putting the first coat on, so I've switched to a medium blue, which may be too bright, but we'll give it a go. A 963. As an alternative, I've got some Prussian blue here, which is a darker coat. So what I might do, given that I've got 2 bottles of this, is use the Prussian blue as a starter, and then maybe use the medium blue as a highlight. I just don't want this to look too dark, so the first thing I'm going to do is mix this up. Give it a shake, then apply it, see what I think as it dries. There's almost a purpley tinge to this Prussian blue, and it is the dark blue. It may be that is too garish a contrast, but we'll have a look when we start to paint. Just a tip really with these bottles, Vallejo don't tend to put the little agitators or little ball bearings into their bottles. I've never found that to be too much of a problem. Other manufacturers do, like the Reaper paints that I've used on some of the other parts of the model. But what I do with these, yes, I'll shake them by hand. If it's a bottle that I haven't used for a while, I've actually got a lady's nail varnish shaker that I'll put this in and give it a good mix up. You can achieve nowadays, you can actually buy them as specialist model paint stirrers, but as I say, I don't use it very often, but mine I bought for a few pounds online, and I think it's probably cheaper to buy it as a nail varnish shaker or agitator rather than a specialist paint agitator. So we'll just take another pot, as you can see here, one of my little paint trays. We'll give this a shake, and we'll see what we do in terms of the coloration. It probably needs a bit more of a shake, this one. It's quite a while since I used the Prussian blue. Another little tip is that sometimes I find the ends of these paint pots will become blocked, so I just use one of my sort of steel spears to release any sort of dried blockage that may have occurred there. I'm just going to offer up a little bit of this and see what I think in terms of colour. As you can see, that is a bit darker, but I think if I then go back and maybe highlight the top section, that won't be too bad. I'm in an iron about whether to use the lines that you can see here to help me mark out a profile of a tile, but we'll keep going with this. Make sure that when it dries, we've got no remaining glue lines, and as you can see, I'm not bothering too much about whether I go over the edges or not. It's really just about getting in underneath the cocktail sticks that are forming that impression of the ridge line of the tile. I've also decided that I may come back to this. On some of the pictures, this sort of roof curvature here, or this sort of accent point, if you like, was actually gold. Not convinced it would look great, but I think it might be something that gets a much lighter colour of the blue. So anyway, I'm going to just run around the roof sections with this. and also the roof sections that are actually on the walls themselves. So I'll carry on doing that, and I'll come back when I've finished off. Okay, so I've finished running around with the darker Prussian blue. I've made a decision to go over the ridge lines, because when I started painting it, apologies, this one's still a bit wet, it became obvious that I needed to paint this to give us an even finish. So now I'm going to leave this to dry a little bit, and I'll probably tackle the brown here for the wood and the inside with the undercoat, or the primer, sorry, and I'll then go around the top here. But as soon as that's dry, I'll come back and show you what the next stage is all about. Welcome back. The paint has now dried. Just lift that up a little bit so you can see that we've still got those lines available to us. Just get this here, look, where you can see the impression of the tile. We've got a little bit of the paint still showing, the glue still showing, which we're trying to obscure with the paint. But overall, from this sort of distance that I'm looking at, you know, even just from a few inches away, you really don't see that at all. So the next question becomes, what do we do now? Well, this was the Prussian blue that I was using to undercoat. This was a triad that was recommended for 15mm figures, actually, where we've got quite a good and distinct colour contrast between the two. So I'm thinking about using this as a highlight. What I might do is just try this top section first with the lighter paint, which I'm going to give a shake, and I'll just see what we think in terms of the general impression that we create. I'm going to try taking a little brush here and seeing what the colour contrast brings. Just putting this into a little receptacle, you can see that that is very much lighter. I think if I was doing a figure, that would be quite a small scale figure, that would be quite a decent sort of highlight. But I'm now just a little bit worried about the strength of it in terms of the difference. But because you can see these lines here for the tile, I'm really tempted to try and lift those out with a bit of the paint. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let's have a little look at what this might appear to be if we were to start marking out that sort of general tile impression. I think this is a bit, this might need a little bit of watering down, actually. It's quite sticky as a paint. So obviously we're back to a much brighter colour, but actually I'm just thinking, you know, given that we did quite a distinct colour on the brickwork, maybe this quite noticeable difference in colour might be appropriate for this roof section. Sorry for twisting it, but it's a little bit harder to see working off camera in this way. I think, as I say, just grab a little bit of water from the pot. Oops. Pop some of that in there. Ooh. That's better, a bit better. And I'll just grab this little mixer, give it a bit of a mix in. Don't know if it's noticeable on camera, but as that's drying, that's becoming slightly darker. And I think if I water the paint down a bit, it will pick up some of the coloration from the base coat and won't be quite so garish on the eye. And of course, the more I do of this, the better it's going to become. Probably have to get myself a better paintbrush. This is one of my rougher paintbrushes, which is fine, but we're not getting quite the crisp line that I'm looking for. Again, if you think that you've made a bit of a mistake there and I've not been very clear there or very clean, I can just go back and reline that if it's noticeable. Obviously this requires a bit of a steady hand, but again, every mistake can be overpainted, and you don't have to go too crisp because basically you're going to view this from a distance and it's the overall impression that's going to count. So let's have a little think about what that looks like. I said I'll probably get a better brush to finish this off, but if I try and put a little highlight down, I think I'm basically going to have to do enough of this. Obviously in isolation that's looking not too fantastic at the moment. If I just move that around, you know, at the moment it just looks like I've drawn squares on the roof. That may be the overall effect that we're going to be left with, in which case I might think again. But at the moment I'm just thinking I need to do more of this for us to have a sensible look at, is this a look that I'm happy with, or is it, as I say, just squares painted on a roof? And the honest answer is I won't know until I've done more. So I think what I'll do is just finish off this section, maybe do a bit down the sides, and then just take a view on it, maybe even sat on the castle, so that we get a realistic view of what that brings. Just try and, well, hang on, bring a bit more light in. Not sure if that's helping or not, but as I said, if we carry this on a bit, I have a feeling that it might work. It may be too garish in terms of colour difference, in which case I could even use a blue wash to actually tone it down. You can see it quite clearly on the camera actually that there's a line. I haven't quite joined the line correctly there. Again, we can just go across that with our darker colour a little later on, just to bring back the crispness that we're looking for. But this certainly is removing my concern about the glue line that we were left with, because that is going to disappear basically. And let's carry on doing a bit more of this. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to carry on doing that. I think actually the camera is picking up more of a colour differentiation than I'm seeing off camera, as it were. But I'll fill all that in and then give you guys a look, and you can tell me what you think. Okay, possibly not easy to see on the camera, but we've now got a bit of the etching out, and I've left it rough. I haven't tidied up any of these overruns here that we've got. Sorry, whereabouts are we? You know, so I will go back and tidy those up. However, I can tell you that from the naked eye, that actually is beginning to look quite good. Just as a pointer, obviously, for those of you who prefer a slightly different technique, we could have put the lighter colour on first and then done a wash over. I'm actually still considering whether to do that or not, but I'm going to carry on lining out and see what I think. But I just thought I'd give you a view. Obviously, we get the one of the other original ones over here. That's the sort of difference that we're getting. So as I said, probably not going to look great camera wise until we do all of them and then maybe put them in situ on the actual upper floors themselves like this. But yeah, I'm happy enough to carry on with that, although it is obviously quite an investment in time. Let's face it though, this castle has been quite a significant investment of time. One little bit of extra work isn't probably going to make much difference. So I'll carry on doing the lining in, probably do the rest of them, and then let you guys have a look. Okay, welcome back. Just a bit of an update. I've taken a little look at the finish I had on these, and I wasn't impressed with the ability to line out nicely. And I think it's possibly a little bit unnecessary anyway. So what I'm doing is revisiting the lining out and just coming down the edge of the the cocktail stick so that we leave that sort of depth impression intact. We've still got these lines coming through reflecting the tiles, so what I'll probably do is just give this a wash over after I've finished, but actually the whole process is now a lot quicker because I'm just taking a bigger brush and running down the side. It's quite easy to keep it reasonably straight, but again, I'm not worrying too much now about whether I catch the edges or not, simply because this is going to help mask any of that residual glue marking, and also is really a lot quicker. And I think actually, given that I'm going to come and put that wash over the top, we're not going to lose a lot in terms of the visual effect here, because this is again something that's going to be visible from a little bit of a distance, and even up close we're still going to get the impression of those tiles because the etching is showing through. And yeah, hopefully this will make the whole process a little bit more manageable in terms of time and effort. And to be honest, I wasn't as keen on the look. It doesn't have the same impact that we're getting from the stonework, so I just felt the trade-off wasn't worth it in terms of the overall effect. This feels a little bit more reasonable, and I think actually might end up with an overall better effect anyway. And I have been lining in the cocktail sticks in terms of following that ridge line and then going partially down each side, just leaving a small amount underneath to create that impression of depth. But yes, so this is much quicker, and as I said, personally not much in it in terms of the overall effect, and I'm interested to see what it looks like when it's dry, and then when we or when I decide to put the wash on or an ink, depending on what I think is the right approach. At the moment I'm thinking just to put a bit of black wash together with some of this dark blue, the Prussian blue that we used originally, and then let it soak nicely into these ridges. So it may look like I'm putting on quite a lot of paint, but I'm trying to smooth it out quite nicely and get a good line down each side. So that we don't lose all of that detail. So if we just finish off this last little bit, we can get a look at this versus the original in terms of just the dark coated version. Okay, that's that one. And if we look at the original, you can see we've lifted it quite a bit, but actually we've still got the markings of the tiles. And as I say, I'll come back and do that shortly once we've done the rest of the roof and given it a chance to dry. Okay, so I've finished putting on the lighter coat now. I'm pleased with the way it's turned out. It's providing a little bit more in terms of hiding the original paint, glue lines that I was worried about. It's also, I think, provided a slightly more even finish. We've still got the etching shown for the actual sort of tile effect. And whilst you might wonder why I've painted the undercoat and then a lighter coat, I think part of the answer is that obviously we've still got some of that depth in terms of underneath colour. If I happen to have missed the odd section as well, that obviously will be somewhat protected or made slightly invisible because of the darker colour underneath. What I'm going to do now is take the residue that we've got left over from painting. I'm going to add to that with a little bit more paint, just to give a good blue tone, and then I'm going to use an Army Painter dark tone to actually take this down quite a few notches. I also find this quite a useful thing. It's the mixing medium for shade. Again, it's a war paint product, but actually I didn't used to rate this, but I actually use it quite a bit now, particularly on figures if I'm doing that sort of paint, that sort of finish. I'm going to put quite a bit more of it in. You only need a few drops of the wash medium to really help it go along there. And I'm going to just try adding quite a bit more in terms of water to this, so we get a really watery feel. And then I'll mix it up and start to apply it and see what I think in terms of that overall effect. So there was quite a bit of paint left in the receptacle, and it's just sort of, as you can see, perhaps not quite dark enough. So let's get some more of this in there. I could use some black to really take the edge off, or use some of the Prussian blue, but I was just interested to see what the effect was of a very light wash on the colours that we've done here. To be honest, that is definitely not watery enough to be a wash. So let's quickly get rid of that. I'm just scraping that off with a little bit of tissue. We've got some dry edging. Sorry, we've got some edging in there, which is not too bad actually. So we'll just continue to water this down a bit until we get a bit more of a wash or inky type appearance. Keep going, keep going. And I'm going to try and, in fact, I think I'm just going to repeat what I was just doing then with the tissue paper, with the tissue actually. Just go down the edges, get into that a little bit more. Okay. And then before it dries, just get this old rough cloth that I've got here. See what happens when I Give that a bit of a wipe. Okay, really not the effect I was hoping for, to be honest. So I'm going to revert to a proper black wash. Take this to one side for a moment. Get another receptacle. Start off with a few drops of this in the mix there. And maybe just take some of this and see what we get. In fact, let's give that we're running out a little bit here. So what I've got over here, a couple of blue tone inks. I might just try that instead. So that is again a war paint product. Let's mix that around a bit. I don't know if you can see that, but obviously that's very blacky now in terms of the coloration. I think I have my answer in terms of the ink effect. Not sure what that looks quite like on the camera. Let's see if I can give you some extra light. But actually, in terms of effect, that's already starting to create a much nicer depth. I think the answer there is ink versus my ham-fisted attempt to produce a wash. Probably just too much paint in my wash and not enough differentiation. And this is where the mixing medium bears dividends, or brings dividends, sorry, because it tends to allow I find anyway, it tends to allow the sort of ink wash effect slightly more chance at spreading evenly. See if I can adjust the light. It's quite difficult actually with this being quite a glossy finish. But we'll carry on doing this. Then I'll get some natural light in here, and hopefully you'll be able to see a little bit more the overall effect. We are getting some lining. We're getting some highlighting, if you like, or raising in terms of the profile of this etching that we've got with the tile effect. So I'm going to carry on using the blue ink, maybe a little bit of dark tone, and wait for that to dry and see whether we've ended up with a nice finish. Sometimes when you use a wash or inks, it can look a little bit dirty, you know, uneven. So I'm really hoping that the medium that I'm using will help the process and help the coloration stick where we need it to be. Okay, we're picking up a little bit of underneath colour on that one. I'll probably leave that section for a moment. Let's go back and use some of the inks again. Again, use some of the wash medium. Give it a stir. And then run down here on the edges. So, slightly tapping noise there from the uneven roof. Well, actually not the roof, but the uneven board that we're on here. So I'll just hold it, keep that noise away. Okay. Actually, I think that's going to look okay. I've got a few dark sections accumulating at the bottom. Occasionally give that a bit of a run, just to avoid it being too clumpy. And I think in the long run that'll be fine. I'm just going to quickly deviate, pop some of the blue in here. Clean this brush out for a minute, and what I'll do is I'll just reline this top section so that when it dries, it's going to have the same finish as the section on the other side, and hopefully that will make any sort of difference in terms of finish disappear. I'm only doing this because it had that initial sort of attempt at a wash on it. Okay, so now when I come back to this, we'll end up with a consistent finish to match the same as the other side. Okay, but I'll leave that to dry obviously, and whilst that's drying I'll move on to the other sections and repeat the same effect with the wash. You can see it's not too bad. I think, yeah, we're going to be okay. So let's just mix up some more. My dark tone is really blocked itself. So I'll just clean the nozzle out of it. There we go. I think it's probably important to use a little bit of that with a lot more of the blue ink. We'll use a little blurb of that. Clean out the brush. Give it a mix around. It's quite interesting. I don't know if you can see from the camera itself, but that looks quite dark grey really. But the minute you start to apply it, you see the blue spring out at you. So yeah, just make sure that we get this evenly applied to all of the roof sections. Give it a dry and then I'll show you the effect. Welcome back. The ink wash is now dried. On the whole, I'm pretty pleased with it. We've got some darkening in these creases. As you don't know if you can see that too well on the camera. There's just a couple of areas where we've maybe gone over a little bit in terms of what I was hoping to achieve with the paint effect. So I'm just going to try the dark Prussian blue just to see if it will take the edge off some of those more intense areas, and just run that down there a little bit, take out some of this. Don't want to go too mad with this. Been left with a bit up there as well. So this is very much just about tidying up, taking out, I said that, just the dominant effect of some of the wash. There's a particularly noticeable bit there. I think when that dries, that won't probably be too bad. Not too much on this side. Just going to take the edge off some of those dark clears. That one's gone pretty well. That one's gone pretty well. Just put a couple of bits on there. That's great. Okay. Just repeat this on the other ones, just checking out whether we've got any particularly significant pieces. To be honest, when you look at it en masse and, shall we say, en situ on the castle, you really don't pick up any of that differentiation or that sort of like excessive wash effect. It just looks like a bit of wearing, weathering, if you like, on the actual tiles. So I don't want to get rid of too much of it, because the overall effect is actually quite good, which we'll have a look at shortly. The only other thing I'm going to do is just go into here. Let's lift the camera up. Go into these corner pieces and just make sure that where we've got an overrun, I just address that. I want that to look quite nice and crisp. You'll notice that I've gone over a couple of times with my fingers. Don't worry, that will happen. Obviously we're about to go over this with the white anyway. Okay. So I'm just going to repeat that process on the other roof sections. Try and get in at these ones as well. That's pretty good. Didn't go over the edge there with those. Haven't made up my mind yet what to do about this and whether we go for a gold colour or not. Let's just get rid of some of this bright blue. There we go. Haven't done too badly on many of the sections, but it's always a good idea just to have a nice check on what you're doing. Now there's some there, look, you can see those bits there, so we'll visit that with the blue. This Prussian blue is quite interesting, as it looks quite different when you put it on to how it actually dries. So I'll just double check the finish on that once it's actually dry. But yeah, generally very pleased with the effect there. You can probably see that on some of the other sections I'd started to paint this top section. So what I'm going to do now is just get myself the flat brown and prepare to start painting that. Okay, so let's continue on. I'll just readjust that. So I'm going back to my flat brown to match the wooden sections. We're starting to actually run out of this. You can hear that squirting noise. So what I'm probably going to do is just add a little bit of water to that, just to help the paint last a bit longer, to be quite honest. And also it is quite a thick paint, as I'm getting towards the end of the bottle. And all we're doing here is taking this section, and again it's a little bit awkward, so sorry, hopefully that will catch up. There we go. Just running along these lines, trying to be as careful as possible. But if you go over the line, there's nothing that we're doing that can't be repaired. We'll just go over it with the primer again. What I tend to do, I think, is go left to right and just keep the hand straight as possible, and readjust if start to lose the grip, as it were. And then I'll often turn it the same way to continue up here. What I would say is I've put one coat on of the primer, and you can probably see on camera that this really isn't fully covering the underneath of the model or the MDF, despite the fact that it's got some sealant on. clearly we're going to need to put a couple of coats on anyway. So I really wouldn't worry too much about if you've missed some of the roof section. Let's see if I can light that a bit better. There we go. And what I'm actually noticing when I look at it closely is I didn't go quite up to the lines anyway. So I suspect that I'll do at least one other coat of white, or it's actually grey, believe it or not. And then we'll take a look at what the model looks like. But it's just a question of trying to keep your hand steady. But as I say, don't worry too much. If you go over, you've always got the option of going back and revisiting it a bit later on. I'm also going to obviously do the window frames. Oops, see, I mean, I've already done it there, look. But I'm really not too concerned by that. And again, unless anyone gets a magnifying glass out, the odd blemish is going to be hidden by the overall effect of the model. I think if you're going to go over the edge at all, it's going to be on this window section. But again, don't worry, it's actually far easier to come back later on and actually fill that in. This is a size 0 brush, which is probably just about right for what we're doing. Okay, let's just tuck those in. So yeah, look, I've got a bit of a blemish there, which is a kind of blue and brown combination. Just run down that there. It's surprisingly challenging doing this upside down and sort of holding the piece away from you. I tend to sort of tuck this in as I'm painting naturally. Just go into the sections at the top and the bottom, down the sides. Okay. So I'm going to carry on completing the painting here. You'll notice that some of these burnt edges look fairly brown anyway, but I'm still continuing. Oh, look at that! Still continuing to paint them just to get that completeness of consistency of finish. So I'm just going to carry on, finish the rest of the wood sections, then we'll come back and start painting the white again. Okay, so welcome back. That sound you can hear is me shaking the primer. So just to reiterate, we're going to try again with this surface primer from Vallejo, and you can see there the code is 73.601 grey. I think it's coming out very white, but that's actually something that I'm actually quite pleased with. I've gone around sort of roughly marking out the wooden sections now. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of the primer into our pot. Won't use that one actually because that's still got the blue in, so we'll just take a new one. It's quite runny, this primer, even though I've given it quite a good shake. But I think what I'm going to do first is take one of my rough brushes and just go inside. Hopefully you can see a little bit about what I'm trying to do here. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to run down along the edge there where we've got our dark grey or Panzer grey floor. And I'm just going to make sure I don't go too mad over that area or that line, sorry, because I want to retain that sort of crisp feel for where the wall transitions from the floor. Okay, just do that quickly. I'm not too worried about the inside, really, I guess. Only in that I'm not convinced that I'm going to have figures in there a lot of the time. But obviously there's no excuse for not giving it a half decent finish. I always find it easier to do something like the bottom first, where I need to keep a relatively steady hand. But again, if you do go over, I think I've just gone over a little bit there. That isn't a problem. We can always go back and reline it. And the grey is going to be a hell of a lot easier to reline than the white. Yep, just run that along. Trying not to go too mad over the edge. And obviously trying not to make it too runny either, because otherwise that will just leak onto the floor. Okay, I mean, to be honest, it's probably good enough, but if I look at it like that, just need that section over there might need a little bit of work. Now, just very roughly painting in this section now. Try and avoid going into the window that you've just painted on the outside, if you see what I mean, because that's got the brown on it. But because it's cut away, relatively easy to achieve. I've decided that I want the top painted white, as in the top of the wall here, so I'll be painting that white because that's the sort of lasered MDF side. It's quite brown, probably almost certainly going to take a couple of coats before that looks anywhere near sensible. Yeah, so that I'm going to continue that, get this starting to dry, and then come back and visit the front section. So yeah, so that's the kind of effect we want. It will dry a little bit sort of patchy, and I think it will need a second coat, but you don't want to do too much more than that at this stage, otherwise it'll end up just getting forming ridges. So I'll quickly carry on and finish that, and then come back to the front side. Okay, so I've now finished the inside white section, gone around the top there, so it's time to visit the front and try and sort out some of these. So I'm going to use a combination of the thick and thinner brush. So I've got a number, well, weirdly these are both labelled as zeros, but this one feels substantially larger, the Kolinsky Sable one. This is a broken toed brush, so I'll probably start with this one. I've let the I'll show you the consistency. I've let the paint in here dry for a bit, and that's really about trying to get some more intense colour when I go over these sections. Hopefully the camera will refocus. Come on, here we go. So whenever I go over these ones, I'm just trying to get a slightly more intense colour so that we get a better coverage without nearly made it worse there, without losing too much in terms of definition or that flow. We've got a lot of little lines down there. I'm probably going to use the little thinner brush just to create a nice even line, and try and blend it in a bit at the top there. You can see a few little areas where I need to concentrate on that on the overrun on the wood. be honest, I think that's a little bit too stodgy for me. So I think I'll just add a little bit of I just think I'll add a little bit of the fresh mix there. Stay with the cocktail stick and try and get somewhere in between the free-flowing, fairly watery mix that we've got out the bottle, but without creating something which is too stodgy. You can already see the difference. Sorry, let me just get that back in focus here a bit with this. So you can see that that's now not really covering that line too well. Give it a bit of a mix with the underneath. There we go, it's not too bad actually. Give it a mix with the slightly stodgier paint underneath. We're already starting to create a nice finish there, a much tidier finish. Get rid of some of those lines there. Given that this is a little bit more watery, I don't really think there's too much can go wrong, or too many ways you can go wrong with this, other than to try and get too much in one place and watch it run. But it does help that you can sort of move it with the brush across to those hard to get at areas. You can see the general effect is that we're tidying up nicely as we go along. And it's not unreasonable to do a couple of goes at this, as in there might be times when you go back over the brown, you need to revisit that, but as long as you're getting closer to the end result each time, it's nothing to worry about. If you've got real problems with the line, then you can obviously try and use like a masking tape or something similar, but I think for most, if you get the sort of piece in the right position, you'll probably find that it's not too much of a challenge to get approximately up to the line. And as I said, from a distance, some of these crimes will be hidden quite nicely. So I'm going to carry on doing that, and I'll give you a look at the finished article. Okay, I'm just sort of finishing off the painting here. Got a couple of little bits where paint has coagulated. I don't think it's going to be too noticeable, but I may very well, that little spot there, may very well just get a little fine scrape on that and redo it. But generally speaking, quite a good colour that I've achieved. I've got a few areas in there that I'm going to have to revisit when it dries. The next question to answer is, what do I want to do about these roof sections? I could paint them in and make them dark blue, and that's probably the conservative answer. But I've also just picked up this Vallejo Old Gold, which is 878. I'm tempted, certainly on the upper roof sections, to give it a go and see what I think. Just because I want to kind of lift the model a little bit on the roof line, and I think that this might be a good way to do it. I'm starting with an Old Gold, because it was one of the paints that came to hand, but also because it will be interesting to see exactly how sort of garish it looks on the actual model itself. So let's put a little bit in the paint pot. We'll get a slightly larger brush and see what we think. Gold doesn't really go very well on many colours. I tend to paint a sort of browny effect. Sorry, a browner undercoat, maybe a beige. But actually, I don't know what you think on the video. I'm not unhappy with that as a finish. So I'll probably just run round the rest of the roof line And this is still sort of historically consistent with the way that castles were given some sort of ornate dressing, as it were, or a bit more of a ostentatious show. I can always come back and paint this in the darker blue if I don't like the finish. But what I'm tempted to do is paint this, then paint the equivalents on each of the lower level roof sections, and just see if when it's placed on the model itself, that looks more like a samurai lord's castle, and we're happy with the end result. So yeah, I'll just carry on finishing this off and give you guys a view on it when it's finished. Okay, so I thought I'd give you a little look at where we are with the overall progress on the castle. As you can see, I've painted the gold edges on the roof detail, or on the ridge line there, and I've also put the same ink wash on these roof bits. Couple of things to move on to really. I need to put some more work into detailing the doors and the wood effect on the structures. I'm going to be doing that shortly. I'm also going to tidy up a couple of little overruns here in terms of the ink wash, and then it's tackle the basing. But you know, in general terms, as a piece for the gaming table, I'm more than happy with the way that this has turned out, and I think it's going to work really well for the Test of Honor games, some of which we may show you on video as well. Thanks.